So once again, I want to welcome you all to the BOM Management in Windchill 11 webinar. My name is Michael Wimberly. I'll be conducting the webinar today. I don't have... All right, so the overall agenda is just simple introduction to boundary systems and of course going into the actual demonstration of the software itself or the BOM management itself. So for boundary systems, first off, once again, I'm Michael Wimberly. I've been with boundary systems now for about 4 years. I've been working with PTC products since the early 90s. I am certified in CAD training classes, as well as Windchill training classes, as well as a Windchill implementer. So I've done quite a bit with Windchill. I've been through the highs and the lows of how things have worked. So I've been through from everything from Pro PDM all the way through Windchill. So it's been a great adventure, especially to see where Windchill is right now. And then once again, like I said, I've been in the CAD arena as well. So I've seen everything from all the menus to all the nice quick icons and right mouse clicks now. Now, as for Boundary Systems is a company that is headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. They've been around quite a while. We have several technology leading partners such as PTC, Solid Thinking, eTraj, Autodesk, and other technology companies. We are, once again, we have been the 16th fastest growing company, private owned companies in the greater Cleveland area. So we've been consistent on their ratings over the last couple of years. We'll see that in just a moment. And some of our additional capabilities are product lifecycle management, data management, CAD design consulting, simulation, and product developments. What you're seeing on the right side are just some of the companies that we currently work with. These, of course, aren't all the companies that we work with. This is just a small listing of some of those companies. So as I said, we've been awarded several awards inside of different industries, such as the Inc. 5000 and the Weatherhead 100. We've been on those listings for the last 5 years, which has been great for us. And then once again, some of our major accreditations are: we are a Windchill Certified Implementer, we are a PTC Preferred Service Provider, and we are a PTC Certified Training Partner. We do hold training classes at our facility in Cleveland, but we also hold them in other locations as well. We'll even come on site if necessary to do training, if that meets the needs. All right. So this is my information, and I'll put this back up once we finish the web information. So at this point, I will go ahead and jump into Windchill. All right, so what we're looking at right now is just simply, a regular product that we have inside of Windchill. So as you can see, as with a lot of products, you have the base product itself, and then you have folders that go in and break it down into different categories. So the way this one is actually broken down, we actually have a folder specifically for CAD, and we also have a folder specifically for parts. And actually, I do want to back up real quick before I even go into that. And I meant to ask you these questions. So currently, how are you currently using Windchill? So if you can go in and select on the screen and answer those questions, I would appreciate it. Okay, so it looks like there's a good mixture here of using it just for CAD storage as well as using it for your CAD and documents, even with the WT parts. And we do have some that currently are not using Windchill. Okay. So the next one is, how are you currently managing your BOMs? Are you doing it within Windchill with your CAD structure? Are you doing it with the Windchill with the WT parts, or are you managing all your CAD structures outside of Windchill? Okay. Once again, looks like the majority of people are actually managing outside of Windchill, which is probably just inside of an ERP system. No problem. Okay, so now we'll jump back into the Windchill itself. So as I said before, Windchill right now, the way I'm looking at this product, we have different folders that are set up for this. So we have our CAD files that are stored. We have our document files that are stored in a specific area. We have a bunch of different information, including our parts that are stored, parts being WT parts that are stored inside of Windchill. So what we'll do right now is we'll go ahead and look at it the traditional way, which is going into our CAD structure and going in and displaying the information. So as you can see, everything is broken down, but I will come in and I do want to look specifically for an engine file, and I want to actually pull up the actual engine assembly. So with that, we have all the general information. As we can see, we're still seeing all of our standard general properties for Windchill or for the CAD files. And then we go into our actual CAD structure itself. So over here, we can see on the left side, we see the structure. This structure is basically the exact same structure that we see when we're inside of Creo as a whole. The exact same layout. You can go through and expand it and see the actual files underneath it. So everything that we built up inside of Creo is what we're seeing over here on the left side of the screen. On the right side, we just see some general information. So this shows us kind of a single level BOM. So we have our PTC engine, and it shows basically this same top level assembly. But if I go through and I select on the engine body PTC assembly, it'll now show us the information that's inside of that subassembly. So it'll go through and show us. Now we can't expand it here. It's just showing us that top level assembly. So it's just like going in and expanding it to see what that information is over here. Now, once again, the other thing that's beneficial with this is we do have our visualization for that assembly as well. So it'll take just a few minutes to a few seconds for it to actually pull up the viewable for this CAD file. But as you can see, it is taking a little bit of time to come and pull it up, but it is actually bringing up the actual viewable for this. Now, this is a live viewable, which means as I go through and select things in my structure on the left side, they will highlight in the actual viewable on the right side. So as I begin to select on different items, we'll see them highlight on the screen. Excuse the graphics, not sure why that's looking like that. But so we can go through and see each one of those. But if you also notice, it did pull up everything all at once, so we had to wait a few minutes to actually go through and see everything pulled up on the screen. Now, once again, there are some advantages to having just your CAD structure because it shows you everything that you have inside of Creo. But there are also a few disadvantages that you have by just going in and using your CAD files. Because now at this point, if there are documents that we want to go through and relate to this, then we don't see those in here. There's no way of actually showing this information. If there are some replacement parts, some substitutions, if there's some errors that we want to go through or that need to be set up, or I should say variances that need to be changed, that can't be shown here using CAD files either. But if you also look, there are also a limitation of the actual reports that you can see. So it's either a single level report or a multi-level report. But you can go through and export all that information out into your ERP system. So you still can go in and take this CAD structure that you see. I can go through and create my multi-level report, and it'll go through and expand it out. And it will actually go in and take this structure and export it out as a CSV file, XML file, whatever it is that we need to go through and export it out as. So there are options right there. And that will allow us to now import that into our ERP system if necessary. All right, so once again, I mentioned just the CAD files themselves, but an enhancement in using Windchill is the use of what are called the WT parts, for those that aren't familiar with those. We're actually able to go through and use Windchill parts to go through and now tie a lot of information together and associate a lot more information. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to go through for just this top level assembly. I'm going to go through and show its WT part. And I'm actually going to go through and I want to go in and view that WT part. Now, what we're going to see is I'm going right into that engine assembly, and what you see structure-wise, the icons are different, but structure-wise, this is the same structure that we saw when we were in the CAD structure. So it's the exact same layout. So for every CAD file, there's an associated WT part file. So if we go through and expand those, we can once again see the structure underneath those. Now, if you also notice on the right side of the screen, we have the visualization. But what it did differently here is that it didn't try to pull up the entire assembly all at once. Inside of Windchill 11, we now have some similar functionality that we have with Creo View, which allows us to go in and selectively pick the items that we want to show on the screen. So if we don't need to see everything at once, we don't have to. We can go through and turn on and turn off the items as we need to see them. So we can just go through and selectively show all the needed information. And then if I wanted, of course, to show everything, I would go in and select the top level and let it go ahead and regenerate the entire assembly. So once again, I did mention, and I'll come back to it as well, one of the advantages here as well is we talked about the reports and the exporting. So now with this top level assembly, we're able to go in and export or create more reports. So we have a multi-level component list. We have a single level consolidated BOM, a single level BOM, a single level BOM with notes. So we can actually go through and create notes inside of our assemblies. We can actually have those in there as well. And of course, we have multi-level BOMs where we can have replacement parts shown. We can go through and have our approved manufacturer or vendor list that we can go through and show. Or multi-level BOM with simply our approved manufacturing list. Or once again, additional layouts such as single source OEMs and of course unique manufacturing parts. All right, and then of course we still have the ability to export those in any other formats that we had before. So once again, one of the advantages here is I'll go through and I'll select, as I said, we're not only able to see our CAD files, so I'll go through and just for this top level, I'll go ahead and tell it to show me all the CAD files so we can see all the directly related CAD files to our top level items, as we see here. But I also want to go through and see if there are any documents associated with any of those. And as we go through and do that, we can see that now for this top level engine assembly, there is an engine test results document, there's an engine specification documents. We can also see down here for our auxiliary drive, there's an installation document and a user manual. So there's a lot of information that we can go through and show as well. And all that is directly related to that WT part. So all the information that we need will be shown right there at one level. And then, of course, we have the ability to show additional things such as replacement parts, distribution targets, and the approved listing. I'll just do a show all, and we'll go into more detail in the smaller assembly, but it'll also allow us to see, as it expands, anything else that may have some replacement items. So what I'm going to do, just to dive a little bit deeper, I'm going to go ahead and open up this auxiliary drive. Sorry, everything is selected. So I'm going to view the information for the auxiliary drive. So once again, here we have just our regular structure. Now, once again, the other thing that's beneficial with working with your WT parts or your part structure inside of Windchill is the ability to go in and add non-CAD design items. So things that you don't necessarily design inside of Creo, but you still want to show it in a BOM structure. One of the things that we did here was the actual software. So we actually added a part that represented the software that we're going to use for this particular assembly. We can also go in and create parts right here in this structure. So I can come over here and tell it I want to go in and create a new part. So I'm going in and now editing my structure right here inside of Windchill. So this is going to be, it's just going to be a part. And then what I'm able to do with that is I can go through and designate if there is a vendor or a manufacturer that I'm actually bringing that from. So I can go through and create a manufacturing list or list of manufacturers. And let's go ahead and use PTC as our vendor. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say basically they're responsible for our CAD and PLM software. And then we still want that to be part of our design structure. And we'll look at this in more detail in just a moment. And everything else I'll just leave as the default. So now what we've done is we've now gone through and added another part, once again, non-CAD part to our actual design structure. And that's what we have here. So all we have to do now is simply go in and check in that assembly to now have that structure updated. So as we're going in and working, as I did in the previous one, I want to go through and see any other related information that I may have. So once again, we can go through and see if there's any documents with any of that. And once again, we can see that now even in this sub assembly, there are documents related to the water pump pulley, and there's also a document related to the belt. So once again, there's a belt tensioning document, and there's a water pump specs. So once we can go through and continue to show additional information underneath here. We can also look at if there's replacement parts. Great. So we can look here and see that there is a replacement part for this auxiliary pulley, alternator pulley. So if we don't have this part, then we're able to go in and use that part. So we have those things set up as well inside of here. Now, as we saw before, one of our reports that we're able to go in and do is go in and do a multi-level report that shows the replacements. So if it actually does have that replacement, we can go through and show it. And now we can know, okay, if we don't have this, we can go in and use this. And this will be good, of course, for manufacturing and maybe putting these things together. Let's go ahead and select all those items again. And then we can come over here, and if there are approved manufacturing lists, we can go through and see those. And actually, we can look here at this software. So if I go directly into this software item, and I can see that it takes me right to the approved manufacturing and approved vendor listing. And we can see that we have a vendor in here, DigiKey, that we're basically for that, but we're telling them that they're not a vendor that we want to go through and use. So we can go through and set up vendors that are preferred vendors and vendors that we basically say, okay, we're not going to use any of their software. Now, once again, nothing against DigiKey. This is just an example. So we can just go through, and now if we need to, come over here and specify the actual vendor that we want to go through and use. So I can come over here, and I am going to select this as a vendor. And then the vendor that I am going to use is going to be the Moser Electronics. And for them, they will be our software vendor. Yeah, I'll just put vendor. But you can give it the description that you want. And then once again, this still is a design level item. And we will come down here and specify that they are our preferred vendor for this particular item. And now we can see that. And when we go back to our assembly, we can now see both of those listed in here. And as you can see, as we select on them and we go to their attributes, this one has a preferred vendor with a green dot. This one has a do not use vendor with basically a stop sign. So we can go through and set up this information as well. So all of this we can go through and add as we're continuing through our structures. Also, we can go through and use multiple views to go through and see information as well. So for example, we have a usage display. What that simply is showing us is that the quantities of each item that's actually being used. Now, if we also look, this one right here for this belt has a variance associated with it. So if we come over and we select on that variance, we can come over here and we can see that, yes, okay, there's something going on with this belt. This belt has an issue. There's a belt thickness issue that's going on. So if I go in and select on it, I've gone through and set up this variance, and it basically is giving me a waiver that says, yes, we can go in and use this. But what is the problem? Well, the thickness of the belt is different. It's actually basically 0.375 when it should be 0.312. So it's a little bit thicker than what we actually spec'd out, but it is acceptable. But it's acceptable for a certain number of items. So because we don't want to stop our production, we're saying, okay, we're giving this basically a waiver that says we're only going to use this 5 times. By the time we get to the 5th one, we should have our new belts in, and we can go through and continue on with the right size belts. So we can go through and create those variances as we continue through the manufacturing. So once again, what it does, it allows us to continue to manufacture our products without having to stop. Now, you do have the ability to go through and say, okay, this is a bad part, so we're not going to use this part. So we can actually go through and set that up as well. But for this one, we did go in and say, okay, this part is actually okay to go in and use. Went too far. All right. All right, so inside of here, once again, when we are specifying the uses, we go through and specify that. We have once again, the variances that we can go through and set up. You also have, as we saw, the uses for individual items. You can also go through and set up supersedes. So we can go through and set that information up as well. We can go in and set up occurrences. Now, inside of here, I don't know if I have what I need in here. No, I have to go back one assembly. My apologies. So in here, in my assembly for the flywheel, if I come over here and I look at the uses, it shows me quantities. But just like in your BOMs, when you're doing your BOMs inside of your drawings, you don't know, you kind of want to go through and move those around. So you can go in and say, okay, there's one over here, there's one over there, and there's one in another location. Well, what we're able to do here is we're actually able to go through and define a reference designator. So as we go through and we want to manipulate the structure, we can go through and tell it, okay, so I'm going to go through and give these, this is going to be A1 through A3 that we're going to go through and define. So what that does now, it now assigns a reference designator for each one of those quantities, A1 through A3. And we can see that in the occurrences area. So what that allows us to do is if we want to go through and restructure this, we can actually go through and add another assembly. So we can go through and select and go in and add another top level assembly item. Just taking a second. Once again, I'm just going to call it ASM. And this is going to be, once again, our design assembly. And then for that ASM assembly, I can go through and now add existing files. So I'm going to go in and for that number, I'm going to come over here and use the star 5116. And then I can come over here and designate which one I actually want to go in and use. So in this assembly, we're going to go in and use the A1. And then that will allow me in my flywheel to go in and actually remove A1 from this listing. So I can go through and now manipulate my structures so that now I can go through and configure them a little bit better. Now, I am doing this in the design level. This may be something that we don't want to do at the design level. I mean, we may want to do this as part of a manufacturing BOM. So we do have our design BOM right now, and normally this may be equivalent to what we see in our CAD structure, but we may want to go through and create a design or a manufacturing BOM. So we can go through and actually have one created, and I'm going to go directly to the manufacturing BOM. All right, and for the manufacturing BOM, I am not in the proper assembly. That is actually underneath. Jump too fast. This one. I'm going to open this up. My apologies, I meant to do that inside of here. This is where I want to go through and show my manufacturing BOM. It's not showing it. Of course not. Because that would be too much like right. There's the design BOM. Okay, so just like every demo, something's not working right, which is fine. But what I can go in and do is I'm going to go in and just for this assembly, I'm going to go ahead and pull this one up individually. And I'll go ahead and create it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and create a new view version, which is now going to be my manufacturing version. So I'm going to go ahead and create one for manufacturing. That's now what this BOM is going to be. And then, as I said before, I can now go through and add manufacturing specific items. So I'm going to go in and insert a new part. Now this will be a manufacturing part, so I'm actually going to go through and specify the vendor that I want this part to come from. And I'm just going to pick one off of the list that comes up. All right, and as you can see, it goes in and it adds the manufacturing ID. I'm going to go through and call this program software or program sensors. And then this is going to be a manufacturing specific part. Now, if I did want to create a CAD file for this, I could go ahead and tell it to go ahead and create the CAD file as I'm going in and create a WT part. But if this is just going to be a manufacturing level BOM, then I don't need to go in and create the CAD file for it. All right, and there we have the information. So there's my manufacturing information. Now, as I continue to add more, I can go through, I can go to my different display. I hope if I went to the right tab and toggle between what's in my design BOM versus what's inside of my manufacturing BOM. So I can go through and see those two. So what I'm also able to do, I'm going to go ahead and check this in. All right. I do see that there are a few questions. I'll get to those questions in just a moment. I'll go finish through this real quick and then I'll jump on some of the questions. So what I want to do at this point is I want to go through and show this information. So I want to go through and open this into our manufacturing associative part structure. Now, anybody that's used NPM Link before has gone in and pulled it up and brought up in basically kind of a Java-based application, which is still here. So your product structure explorer is still there, but there's also in Windchill 11 a manufacturing associative part structure browser, which is basically a browser-based function versus an actual Java-based function. All right. So currently, there's our manufacturing item. So what I want to do here is I want to go through and open up the assembly that I want to go through and compare it with, which is going to be, of course, the actual engine. I'm sorry, the compressor assembly design level. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that one. And there we have the two. Now, what I want to do is I want to take those two and I want to go in and basically link those two together. So I want to say that this is equivalent to that when it comes to the top level of the structure. So I'm going to link those two together and just call it, I'm just going to call it top link. All right. And now those two are linked to each other. And then I can come over and tell it to, where'd it go? Synchronize the information between the two. So anything that it finds with the same name between the two, it goes through and automatically links those two things together. Now, once again, I am still inside of the Explorer. So if I did want to go through and add to either one of the structures, I can go through and basically create baselines here. I can go through and manipulate, do information, check it out. I can go through and edit the actual structure to add new or existing files. Any of those things I can go in and do from right here in the structure. So, and then keep those things synced up with each other. So that's an easy way of going in and comparing the two structures to each other to go in and see how your BOMs work. And as I said, with any of this information, we have all of our related objects that we can go through and use. If we have different documents or so on and so forth, we can go through and use. This one actually has an alternate. And the good thing with this is that it has an alternate, and we can specify whether or not when we define that alternate, whether it's simply a one-way, so it can go from this part to the other part, or is it a two-way where they can basically be swapped out for each other. So when you're going to designate that, you can go through and set those two things up. So I am going to go back to that engine assembly that we were looking at. And then once again, I'm going to go in and create out of my structure. I'm going to go ahead and designate let's do a multi-level report and show any of the replacements that may be there. And once again, it'll go through and export this, or we can go in and export this, and it'll show what's an alternate and the substitution. Now with that, of course, you can see that the icons are just a little bit different between those two. The alternate basically can be used no matter where that assembly is or where this component is. A substitute is just specific for the assembly that it's in. So we can go through and use that. And then once again, specify how we want to go through and export that in what format. So I'm going to go ahead and export that as a PDF. And go ahead and open it up just so we can see it. And there's our PDF. All right. So real quickly, I'll look at some of the questions that we have and answer those. Reference information. So the question, if I'm reading this correctly, is asking whether or not the numbers in the BOM that associate with the balloons, if that gets mapped automatically inside of Windchill. So does the BOM balloon information in CAD get mapped automatically to the numbers inside of Windchill? I'm thinking no. And I'm saying that because you're still looking at your CAD information. I mean, the structures in your CAD drawing or your CAD structure, it should be the same, but you can, of course, go in and alter what that structure is. But I don't think they are a direct mapping, but they may line up with each other. The next in the reports, yeah, that one I just showed you. The next question was, does it show both substitute and alternate parts in your reports? And the question is yes. Do you know what companies are mapping Windchill reference designator information to what in SAP? That I have to do a little bit more research into. You're asking about reference designator in the SAP system. I have to look into that a little bit more as far as how those two are mapped together. And then to publish a BOM from Windchill to SAP, what are the available? Really, there's any type of the question is what type of software can you use to communicate between Windchill and an SAP system? There's a bunch of different softwares that's available to do that. I'm trying to think. There was something. Yep. So once again, inside of here, we do have just a lot of information that we can go through and display. That's why it's important that if you are using Windchill, you can go through and use it, not just for your CAD files. Now, once again, CAD structures are great to go in and use, but because Windchill is such a powerful tool, you can go through and not only use it for your CAD files, but also use it for any other types of documents. So we have reference documents, we have regular documents. As I saw, one of them actually has a piece of software that we're going in and we're using. We can go through and set up our vendor list. So we can go through and have our vendors and who's a preferred vendor, who's an approved vendor, whether or not they're preferred or not, we can just go in and specify who's approved. And then we can go through and use that. So that's something that can also be used, of course, when we're linking up to our SAP systems, because that's where we're going. That's the important piece of it, is when we are going in and ordering our parts, who are we getting them from, or who do we not get them from? Because from an engineering or manufacturing standpoint, there may be a difference. So we used it from this vendor, well, it didn't perform as well as when we bought it from this vendor. So, but from a data entry form as far as SAP, that may not be something that's listed. But if we can go through and capture that information inside of here in Windchill, then everybody has access to that same information or that same knowledge that's actually being shared. So and it's very easy to go through and do any of those things. So we have our manufacturing list here. If we want to go through and create a new manufacturer or a vendor, so who are we getting this engine from? If we were going in and purchasing this engine, we can go through and define that information. Are we doing a manufacturer? Sure. Specify once again the manufacturer that we're going to go through and use. And once again, I'm just going to pick somebody off the list. Rabbit sounds good. And then top tier supplier, engine supplier. And then put their name in there. And then once again, I'll make that a design level item. And then this is our preferred vendor. So now that top level assembly has a preferred vendor. So it's very easy. And then, like I said, in our structures, we can go through and show that information. So for this one, I want to go through and make sure that we update that to show the preferred vendor. So it was that quick and that easy to go through and add a preferred vendor. So all this can be easily propagated from here. And then once again, I can take this and just simply, okay, take this entire structure that we're looking at here. And I'm going to go through and export this as an Excel file. And it'll go through and take the structure that we're actually looking at right here, and it'll go through and actually show that same structure here. And as you can see, quantities, the states, and everything is at, and once again, the build status for the items. So whatever columns are being displayed currently here are what we're going to go through and see in our Excel sheet. So that's why it's also important that if you are going in and showing different things, go ahead and show what you need to see. And what we're looking at here, structure-wise, this is just a BOM manipulation. So this is just manipulating the structure that we're looking at here inside of Windchill. This information does not propagate directly back to our CAD structure, because our CAD structure is simply showing the physical parts that we're going in and creating inside of Creo. From here, we're just going in and now adding non-solid, for lack of a better way to say it, non-solid information to this, such as vendors, such as, we could go through and now add our tape or our paint, so things that sometimes we create bulk items for inside of Creo, we can actually go through and have that information just here inside of our BOM structure, so we don't have to have that CAD placeholder. We have the placeholder here inside of our Windchill structure. And of course, that can now be propagated to any other assemblies that we go through and use as well. So, all right. So, as I said, if we do look at that CAD structure is the same structure that we're looking at here. So that's why it's important that if we are going to go through and start using some additional, or we want to go through and capture some other information other than our CAD structure, that's where WT parts come in, because we can start using those parts and now start associating things. One thing I didn't show you, I don't actually think I have it set up right now, is with our WT parts, we can also go through and specify effectivity dates. So when does something occur? So we've gone through and made the change, but we don't want this change to be implemented until the 1st of June. So we can go through and set up effectivity dates for different items, so that when we're pulling a BOM and we pull that BOM today, we get the BOM for today, not the BOM for June 1st. Or we can go back in time and get an older BOM and see what the structure was, a year and a half ago. So you can go through and use that information as well. So effectivity dates allows you to go through and set when something actually gets implemented into the actual structure. So that helps out as well. So like I said, I don't have anything for that set up currently, but you can go in and do that. All right. So at this point, are there any additional questions? If there are, you can type them in. If not, I'll wait. I'll wait. Okay. All right. So once again, if you do have any additional questions or you have anything that you want to comment on, please feel free to contact me. Here's my information here. My phone number. I forgot to put that on here. You can also contact me there. All right. So I thank you once again for your attendance and have a great remainder of the afternoon.